we should consider all of these things that cause us to lose sight and lose our bearing and become less free as a culture through the years. Because there's a lot of great things that work real well for us as long as those that are in charge of the things are upright, honest people that can be trusted. But what happens when that is no longer the case? And so we expose ourselves to this risk, and relying on retirement and Social Security or any retirement scheme being even a fat retirement puts us in peril. Even a fat retirement, even a fat buyer, you know, having all these millions in the stock market, this is something that has worked for a long time, but that going forward,
You get the fish?
people are rightly concerned about their Social Security. And it appears even more relevant than ever after 2020 that being reliant on these systems puts us in a position that we're in very risky waters. We're in dangerous waters. And it's like back in the days of Abraham in the agrarian society, if you were wealthy, you had lots of animals. You also had a large clan, a large family, and people, extended families, because everybody, that's agriculture. You need the hands. Just to say that when somebody saw you, they knew how wealthy you were. It's like, who's that? He's got all those animals and all that huge clan and all those thousands of animals. Wow, he's wealthy. And everybody knew it. But wealth wasn't Abraham's primary goal. It was simply a symptom of his liberty. A symptom of his liberty. It's not that they didn't work. It's just that it naturally happened. It's like if you put a sheep in your yard, within 1 year, it's going to have 2 or 3 babies. You don't have to do anything except for make sure he gets fed grass and water and stays out of harsh elements. It's just going to naturally reproduce, and then those 2 or 3 are going to have 2 or 3, and eventually you're going to have what we nowadays call, so nowadays we give it the name exponential. But you see how nature is? It's just simple. Keep things simple. If we can take things back to its simplicity. No, I'm not saying you have to become an agrarian entrepreneur, although that wouldn't be a bad idea these days. A lot of people are doing it. But Social Security didn't even come into existence till the 30s. And I met a lady before we left USA that told me that she never even had a birth certificate, and she was like in her 60s. She never even had a birth certificate until it was time to go collect Social Security. So a lot of these things that we just assume are just the status quo normal are really just things that have come about after the blooming, we could say, the blooming period of industrialization. And so I'm just saying it's not the only way to do things. It's not the only thing to consider. And again, if that's where you're at and that's how things have worked out, then it's your money, you paid it. But going forward, for those that are not yet there, not yet mature and considering, we need to be looking at our options to consider total self-reliance. And I say that word self-reliant carefully, because remember that Abraham himself wasn't totally self-reliant. First and foremost, he put God first. Then he had his family, his wife, his children, and his extended family, and his helpers. And I'm not saying that Abraham is the perfect example. It's just that it's historical. they didn't rely on any institutions. None of those people, not just Abraham, all the ones that came after him, they didn't rely on industrialization, industrialized concepts of institutional ways of giving people the impression that they're being taken care of. No, people took care of their own. They took care of their families. They took care of their extended families. They relied on each other. That's what self-reliance really is. And yes, they worked. And so retirement was just something that naturally happened to those that got older. They were always part of the picture. They were always there as an advisor. As someone aged, they became the wise, but the older and wise person that you go to when you need some advice. They were always there. They were always present. And they had what they built up all of their lives for the younger ones. And that's the kind of society that eventually comes about to cultures that lose their bearing and become totally and exclusively reliant on institutions that then turn on them, super important, because maybe, just maybe, we weren't supposed to be going down that road to begin with. And I know that we were all born into it, that kind of a system. But you might say, but Frank, liberty dictates that if I don't want to be an agrarian and I just want to buy some real estate and live off of rents, I should be able to do that. And you'd be right. But remember, when we start thinking like that, what happens to these systems that become so ingrained and so reliant on institutions? Think about how many people don't really own their real estate without the help of a bank. Think about how many investors don't really become property owners without the help of a bank. And so that's the challenge. And we need to rearrange our thinking. We should consider all of these things that cause us to lose sight and lose our bearing and become less free as a culture through the years. Because there's a lot of great things that work real well for us as long as those that are in charge of the things are upright, honest people that can be trusted. But what happens when that is no longer the case? And so we expose ourselves to this risk, and relying on retirement and Social Security or any retirement scheme being even a fat retirement puts us in peril. Even a fat retirement, even a fat buyer, having all these millions in the stock market, this is something that has worked for a long time. But that going forward, it's part of that thing where wisdom and diligence comes from understanding principles, and that when we become super reliant, 100% reliant on one thing that is outside of our control, that's the key. All of these things are outside of our control. Social Security, the stock market. Instead, when good people rely on each other, which is what self-reliance really is, and I do qualify that with good people, because a bunch of strangers getting together and calling themselves community, I'll tell you, there's a lot of people here in Mexico trying to do that, and why you don't see me joining these communities is because I'm not a negative person. I just know when some things are doomed to fail and when they're not. Because trust is the centerpiece of life. It truly is. We've grown up with the idea that we trust these institutions. And again, it's just a question of, it's not that the institutions themselves aren't necessarily bad, it's just that they can be easily corrupted by untrustworthy individuals. That's the point. Because a lot of people won't see it. They'll say, well, this is a good idea, Social Security is a good idea because of this and that and this and that. And I'm not going to get into that debate and argument. The point is, certain ideas sound really good, but they're susceptible to corruption. And it doesn't matter how much money you got. I think I heard that even billionaires, like, just as an example, like Trump got his bank accounts frozen or they wouldn't work with him or something like that. So it has nothing to do with how much money you got. You could be rich, you could be poor. That no man may buy or sell, neither rich nor poor nor free nor bond. No man may buy or sell unless he has the mark, the number of his name, the mark of the beast. All right, thanks for coming to the video. I hope you got something out of that. Have a wonderful day.